So today I would like to take the time to introduce a very simple exercise. An exercise that some of you may know, and it's something that was developed by an author. It goes by the name of Douglas Harding. Some of you may have read his books. Um, it's an author that I would say is not so well known in in general. That very few people read and understand. And I find this really quite a shame because it's somebody who developed something really interesting, something to show us a dimension of consciousness, a dimension of our being, which is, we could say, is kind of forgotten. As something that has been completely forgotten by our Western world, and it's very rare to have such a direct and practical and empirical approach. Douglas Harding was some kind of a spiritual teacher and somebody that had a very deep experience of what he would call also a kind of awakening, kind of openness, and something he described as having no head. So of being headless. That was his description of the spiritual awakening. And it's a very beautiful and powerful image for for describing what we are talking about. It's something that makes it really concrete in a way because it gives um, it basically describes a kind of sensation that comes together with a direct interaction with the environment. We see without imposing our mind on the world, right? Of just knowing what's there. Mm. Seeing, we could say, is seeing without watching, just seeing, right? So, well, I don't want to go too long on the story, and I think that this is something that we can research. I just would like to present this exercise because I find it is something very powerful and something that I've seen has very powerful effect on people, and it's something really simple. It's just something that sometimes we don't give much credit to it, and I think this is part of the reason why his books and writings and teachings have not been so widespread in the West, despite he's like a kind of a well-known teacher. Um, it's because what he presents is just it sounds too simple. It's almost too simple to be true, right? And and it's not in the context of a traditional kind of practice. It doesn't come to us with the etiquette like this is spiritual, so watch out, something important is going to happen. It's just a kind of a game. So the best attitude toward this exercise is just really just to play with it, just to have fun and see what happens. But to truly engage the exercise, so to kind of find that innocence and that involvement that we had when we were kids, and we're just getting involved with the game, and it's just your whole being is into the game, right? There's no part of you that's kind of looking at the game, looking at the what is the outcome's gonna be, or what is the purpose of this whole game. No, the game is just to have fun. There's no purpose. And this really suits the meditation attitude because the more we have a purpose, the more we have an intention, um, the more difficult it becomes to actually have a genuine openness toward what is. And this is very simple because what is needs to remain untouched in order to be seen as it is. So if we impose an intention, there's already a slight judgment happening on reality, something that is saying this is not good enough, and my intention is to make it a little bit better, or a little bit less this or more that, right? This is pretty simple. I think this is really like basic understanding. There's nothing complicated to understand here. But as we see, the experience is kind of going to be a little bit puzzling. For many people, this is puzzling. And it's up to us to see what resonates, what doesn't. You know, there's no forcefulness in these exercises, so we just apply it as it comes. And if we see it doesn't resonate, then we just press pause and just let it sit. It doesn't have to. You know, we all very different, and we all need very different approaches. So it's just fine. It's also some of this meditation I post don't quite work for us. It's fine. We don't need to force ourselves or to try to kind of assimilate the contents and really try to make it happen in our life. These things they start happening when it's all really natural and there's no effort and no intention involved in it. So, anyways, this is the exercise. And it might help us to kind of just, as we listen to this, we just ground ourselves in the body, the feeling of the body as it is really, and our surrounding as it is. Right? The body has a specific feeling, this feeling of cohesion, and some parts are felt more clearly, some other parts are kind of almost absent. It's all right. The body as it is, not looking for any specific sensation. This being in touch with the body is just a grounding for what's going to happen now. So the exercise is really simple and it involves pointing at things, okay? And notice this is not a meditation for professionals. It's not involving a deeply concentrated mind or a kind of like particular state of mind. Really superficial, normal, daily, just pointing at things. So our index finger represents the direction of our attention. So our attention is flowing in this direction here. And we are invited to keep the finger and the hand in our visual so that we can see that we're pointing at things. And the invitation is now to just point at an object in front of us. I'm pointing at a box. And I'm noticing, oh, this box is an object. It has all the qualities of an object in the environment. So it has a particular color, it has a shape, it has very clearly defined boundaries. It has shades and a surface and a certain kind of solidity to it. Good, I can point to another object. Just recognize the object you're pointing towards and recognize that, oh, it has all the characteristics of the object in the environment, right? Oh, I can see it. Boundaries, colors, surface, all of it. Now point at your feet. And now you may realize that here there's nothing different seen from the outside, right? My feet are just another object in the environment. They have a color, they have clearly defined boundaries, they have all the characteristics of any other object in the environment. And we can point at our knees, at our quads. Now point at your belly, at your abdomen. So what do you see here? And once again, here there appears to be another object, right? Very clearly defined surface with colors and boundaries. Now point at your chest. And up to here, I can still see boundaries, colors, and all the characteristics of objects. And now point straight at your face. And the question is now, what do I see here? In the direction this finger is pointing to. Now the striking thing is that here, at the very center of our attention, of our existence, we can say, of our being, there's no apparent object. What I see is a finger pointed at me and nothing else. But in the direction this finger is pointing, there's no object, there's no boundary, there's no color. And yet, I can say there is a kind of spaciousness, a kind of emptiness, but it's not a void, right? It's not an absence of me. There's a clear perception of me being there in this perception, and yet there's no object in particular. Now let just try to savor this experience of no object. And you can see this is a very particular experience. Who am I there? When I am the naked subject, this empty space, this openness, this transparency, who am I there? Is there a name, a number with my age, a gender? And you may notice this space is not a transcendent, blissful spiritual experience. It comes with a kind of neutral taste. And this is the landing place, that the most important place to acknowledge and recognize and savor and know in the whole practice of meditation. This place where the subject resides, and it's not really a place. Try to savor this experience there at the center of my being. There's no concept, no idea, no feeling of inside or outside. There's also no boundary. The boundary is in the body, the boundary is in the hand, in the object. But where there is no object, I also see clearly there is no boundary possible. Because this may seem really simple, right? Maybe some kind of like very superficial, normal recognition. And yet, if you take the time to savor, you'll see that there is something deeply wonderful about this dimension. But you see, in the practice of meditation, we often put the accent on transcend, like on kind of like deeply blissful experiences. It comes with a lot of also physical pleasure, of happiness, deep sense of peace, of joy, of expansiveness, and all of that. And this still happens, right? So the more we savor this part, this neutral, empty, spacious dimension of our consciousness, these experiences of bliss and joy and happiness, they'll continue to occur, and they'll become ever more present in our life. But it's important to see that these experiences, which we may have also with other practices, are actually just a byproduct, like a byproduct of the practice of meditation, the practice of presence. The most important part is this neutral, empty, free, open space, which is at the very center of our being. And this is because this part is kind of like the background from which we observe everything in life. You see, as long as we can identify the subject of perception, every object will keep changing, but we'll notice the subject still remains the same. The subjective part of life still remains this open, empty, free space that's at the bottom of our being. And the importance of this is that this space cannot be stained, it cannot be scratched or ruined by the experience we have in life. It cannot be destroyed. And if you take time to savor it, you'll see also it doesn't have to do, it doesn't have anything to do with you, with me as an individual. It's not an individual space. It's something that comes from beyond the individual. It's like a kind of light, a kind of spaciousness that is channeled through the individual. And then I experience life, I think I experience life as an individual, but when I go back to this naked subject, this free, open space at the center of my being, and I realize, oh, there I don't have a name. When I'm in touch with that dimension, there is no name happening. Yeah. the relationship with the body is radically different there, because I see the body from the outside as just an object. The body is an object in the environment, and as an object, it's not mine. It's not something I can appropriate. Hmm? And I this gives me that place of stability from which observing life, right? And there was this sentence, this short quote, I believe, from the Dhammapada. It's a very beautiful um, collection of verses from the Buddhist sutras. And there's this very beautiful quote which says something like, I'm paraphrasing here, I don't remember exactly the words, but it says, a bird will take refuge in the sky, and a deer will take refuge in the forest, while the wise man will take refuge in nirvana. And nirvana is his refuge. The true practitioner will take refuge in nirvana. The nirvana is meant as the extinction of all notions, of all concepts, names, forms, right? And this quote is very beautiful because nirvana is seen not as a mystical end, like the objective, the goal of the spiritual life. So it's not seen like something down there in the future, something like very hazy that I have to achieve, and only then will I have been successful. And so something that kind of deprecates the present moment and projects me into a very compulsive run toward a future which I don't even know what it is. And this sentence, nirvana, is seen as a kind of refuge, as something that you can access at every moment, every single moment, and just be there, to go to the place of the extinction of all concepts. And that's the place of refuge. That's the place of stability for our life, right? And to this, I add a quote by our teacher, Thai Thich Nhat Hanh, which is also kind of challenging. And it's one of those quotes that doesn't get um, brought up very much. And I believe because not many people understand what it actually means, or people generally don't like to recognize the implication of such a radical sentence. And Thai says this: there is no way to nirvana, nirvana is the way. This should be puzzling, right? What do you mean? Nirvana is the way. There is no way to nirvana. Do you have nirvana? Do I have realized this incredible goal? You know, reality is no. What is me doesn't have anything to do with nirvana, but nirvana is always there on the background of my being. So when I go to the place of no name, the place of no age, no inside, no outside, the place where I become speechless, nothing to describe, there's no object to see, that place of absolute transparency, that wide open space at the center of my being, then that is meant to be understood as what nirvana is. And that's the refuge, that you can go there anytime. You just need a finger pointed straight at your face. And now you can see the feeling of this, just to conclude. You point at your face and you see, oh, the feeling of this, what you recognize is that there is no face here. And to recognize that wide open space at the center of your being, it means you're walking around without a head. There is no head on top of your neck. The head is for the other people to see. But from the most intimate and personal perspective you have on life, you have no head. You know, there is not a head to be seen. Unless you're standing in front of a mirror and still what is looking at the mirror has no head, right? What is seen in the mirror is an object, it's a shape, a color, a surface. But what is looking at the mirror is still no head. Open space, wide open space. And that is the place of freedom. That is the place where we take refuge.